Hi, my name is Della Tony. My speech centers around the broad topic of education in America. But first, a couple of questions to consider. When does learning start in our lives? When does learning stop in our lives? Although in our society, education is posed more as a duty than a joy, I encourage you to consider every day, every interaction you have as an opportunity for growth, this one included. In preparation for this speech, just to stand before you, it was important I learned some things about myself. For example, I love to give, which is so easy for me to do in my one-on-one health teachings with my patients as a nurse, but a pretty painful experience when it involves speeches or videos. In these situations, I feel anxious, afraid of judgment, afraid I will be boring or have nothing meaningful to offer whenever I actually think about filming this. However, I've noticed some things happen once I've completed my research, and as I hit that record button, my fears all but disappear because I've learned to frame my fear productively by using what I know is my personal motivation to give to you something meaningful for your lives. This is a tiny example of using emotional intelligence, something I was pretty sure I had little of until working on this presentation. With that in mind, my goal today is to persuade you that emotional intelligence curriculums belong as a standard in our schools, elementary to university, by showing you how tools such as self-management, resilience, and global communication benefit the societies already using them. And as a bonus, my hope is you, my audience, will discover, as I did, emotional intelligence skills can provide an arsenal of tools to help along your life journey. Self-management. Think about that word for a moment. I don't know about you, but for me, just hearing that phrase, self-management, somehow makes me feel more capable or in control. So, what is self-management? It's all about you, who you are, your strengths and weaknesses, how you express emotions, what your thinking patterns are, your worldview. Simply put, it's how you do life in your own individualized way. Sometimes we do life just fine, but in some situations we struggle. Consider the tools taught in this video of fourth graders prioritizing situations where we might all struggle.
This has a bunch of situations and scenarios inside of it that could be possible problems that you might have to deal with.
Once a month, we do a family social emotional lesson.
Every time you have a problem, you have to think to yourself, how big of a problem is this and how am I going to choose to respond?
Families didn't learn this when they were in school.
If I start throwing things and screaming because someone took my pencil, that is an unexpected behavior based on the size of that problem.
As educators at Lister, we feel that it's really important that these types of strategies are taught explicitly, just like we would teach math. And so it's really cool for families to be able to come in and see the things that their kids are learning so that they can manage themselves and their relationships.
It's not a big deal because it's just a pencil.
Today we did something that we call the size of the problem, where students are navigating situations and they're identifying whether that's a large problem or a small problem in order to identify how their reaction should match the size of that problem.
Like it's not like an earthquake or something.
We talked about the different sizes of problems, going from 1 being the smallest up to 5 being something that's major that affects lots of people and takes a long time to solve. The students were given pieces of paper with different types of problems on them, and then they had to fit them into each category of where they would say that size of the problem would fit.
Someone is reading your library book without your permission. What if you react in a bad way when someone reads your library book without you knowing? That could be like a problem too. So you should learn how to react in a good way.
I don't know about anyone else, but at 40 years beyond fourth grade, I can clearly see where my lack of prioritization of certain situations, and therefore my emotions about them, have caused some trouble in my life. Certainly no one in my fourth grade class or at home taught me this, and throughout America today, only a fraction of educators are teaching skills such as this in their classrooms. On a quest to find out more, I discovered there are many school systems in Europe and Asia implementing self-management teachings from pre-K to university and vicariously at home. Much in the news on the educational front, Finland has ranked #1 globally for many years, directly correlating with their implementation of emotional intelligence curriculum integrated with student academics in 1977. Not surprisingly, according to the World Happiness Report 2020, Finland is also ranked #1, as well as #1 in health and well-being of its citizens in the 2018 Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation report. The majority of Finnish children tend to become responsible, self-assured, satisfied adults due to the ongoing tools taught within their educational curriculums, with self-knowledge based objectives such as developing study and learning to learn skills, developing self-assessment skills, taking responsibility for their studies and choices, identifying and using skills and strengths, identifying areas of learning and willingness to adapt plans, and identifying the importance of the subject taught with regard to their future needed work competencies, as shown in one of Finland's current high school age objectives. America's rankings from the same reports mentioned above: 18th in happiness, just above Czech Republic, and below nations reputable for much more troubling issues than ours, such as Israel or Costa Rica. And we rank 27th in health and education. It sounds like we could use a little more happiness, health, and education, perhaps by also incorporating another emotional intelligence tool: resilience. Resilience, the capacity to withstand change, turn lemons to lemonade, or in the words of author, thinker, and life enthusiast Mark Manson, the subtle art of getting better at feeling bad. However, in America, where our trending focus is to be happy, what winds up happening is a great void in the ability to adequately handle the inevitable bad things that will happen in our lives. In 2019, National Public Radio deemed there was an epidemic of mental illness, including diagnoses of depression and anxiety among college-age students. Although some of our anxiety and depression, as students or otherwise, may be attributed to bona fide medical conditions, perhaps there is another cause worth considering: constant change. Today, change is almost a standard of living and working in our world, and as humans as a rule can feel quite a bit of discomfort during times of change. Just check out social media these days. Once upon a time, during the Industrial Revolution, people could count on their jobs and job duties to remain fairly stable. Perhaps a factory worker would become a manager one day, but the generations before us really had some breathing room in life in terms of stable work environments. Unbelievably, our current educational curriculums still reflect that norm. We still essentially follow along with the same learning format we did during the industrial age, including counting Carnegie units, known to students as credit hours and to educators as 120 hours of seat time, which was implemented in the early 1900s. Mandatory seat time every year to obtain education credits for a subject such as math by no means guarantees any competence or proficiency in the math skills of tomorrow. As so aptly stated by educational visionary Sir Ken Robinson, we are teaching to jobs that haven't even been invented yet. To emphasize how prevalent change is these days, an estimated 2.1 scientific research papers are published annually. If we considered only half of those gave a valid, new understanding of some topic, that would be a little over 1 million new bits of information contributing to our current technological age. Whole industries are created practically overnight as a result of the new information we learn each day. And it doesn't look like this era of perpetual change is going away anytime soon. When we understand ourselves, our motivations, positive and negative attributes and attitudes, and the how to use emotional intelligence skills to our advantage, we build a natural resilience toward change. By achieving self-management and resilience skills, we then gain confidence to become better communicators when negotiating our needs and wants. Communicating our needs and wants are not limited anymore to home or family or immediate community. Today, we are global communicators. Our country is no longer center stage. Not only are various cultures intertwining on professional levels, but also on personal levels. We are learning alongside each other in schools, doing business together, involved in global research projects, developing friendships, and marrying and raising families with people that may have had vastly different cultural norms for thousands of years. Teaching the how to communicate is essential and obviously can be done, as exemplified by Finnish high school age emotional intelligence objectives built into their social studies curriculum, such as to train the student in expressing their opinion, guidance to adopt an open attitude to culturally different viewpoints, and support students to act constructively as a member of a culturally diverse community. In Finland's working life objectives, we see teaching moments incorporated to develop abilities to function in the learning environment and different groups, and develop social communication and interaction skills needed for working life, which are designed in the long term to facilitate not only intentional, proactive, collaborative interactions in one's home or community, but also in the inevitable global communication opportunities we will encounter as part of our future. Alternatively, a lack of emotional intelligence toward others in our ever-changing global community can potentially lead Americans down a disastrous path. In 1983, President Reagan was very openly anti-communist, so much so he gave a speech to the American people about the evil empire that was Russia, with words that brought us to the brink of nuclear war with the second most powerful nation in the world. Fortunately for all of us who are alive today, President Reagan possessed at least a small measure of attitude, adaptability, and resilience. After 40-plus letters and countless communications between President Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev, not only was nuclear war averted, a global friendship was made between two world leaders. Ultimately, these two leaders, through their vast differences, found common ground in not wanting their citizens to die from a nuclear holocaust. President Reagan completely changed his anti-Russian stance, conceded to the weapons reduction necessary to gain Russian trust, and Russia ended up relinquishing its possession of its satellite countries and tearing down the infamous wall dividing East and West Berlin. As our new, more collective and collaborative global society blossoms, success in our future ventures depend on our development of respecting, inclusive communication skills, such as those President Reagan exhibited. Our individual styles of communication will dictate personal success as global citizens, and the practice and integration of these skills in our education system beginning as early as possible become more imperative as time passes while we enter the new uncharted territories of the technological advances and globalization to come. To quote Mark Manson, in our culture's constant pursuit for optimum convenience, for whiz-bang gizmos that obey our every whim, for constant positivity and applause in everything we do, we've made ourselves fragile and weak. Though we have virtually no control over other people, corporations, governments, or the terrible things that may happen around us, we do have control over ourselves, how prepared our thinking mind is in dealing with situations that arise, and what courses of action we each take in life. Emotional intelligence curriculums teach us the how to do this, and a large number of Europe and Asia have already adopted those teachings into their schools to ensure their citizens are proficient in skills such as self-management, resilience, and global communication as we normalize into a rapidly changing world. America desperately needs tools to help us focus on these inward-directed solutions to avert global conflicts that so oftentimes crop up while integrating societies together. Now that you are aware these types of tools exist, I ask you to support emotional intelligence curriculum integration at all levels of education in American schools. And I hope as a result of this speech, you have a newfound curiosity in the benefits that emotional intelligence can provide for your life as well. Thank you for your time and consideration. For additional resources you can use now, go to Edutopia or our very own Skagit Valley College class on leadership.